experience. Here's the recording. Thank you for joining us for Casting a Vision and bringing it to life for those of you joining online. Excited to spend the next hour-ish time with you to talk about our learnings. What does it mean to do these things? And give you some examples. We have real life case studies, both good and bad. Don't worry, just because the social media says that we're doing everything and have it all figured out doesn't mean that's actually true. So you guys get the inside scoop. And it's being recorded to document. So when people are like, you got it all figured out, we'll be like, no, here's a video. We don't. It's not. So we're like everybody else. So who am I? What is Light Consulting for you? Those of you less familiar, I am Sarah West, owner of Light Consulting. Started it about 5.5 years ago. And this is my incredible team that I get to work with on a regular basis. So, such a blessing. What we do is mostly financial consulting. We call it fractional CFO, also executive coaching and some leadership training. And then we have sister companies that we'll talk about when I talk about those case studies. Dale Carnegie includes that, like Workforce Solutions. Faith Forward is a nonprofit we started. And the disclaimer is that this is just our information. It does not mean that you will have the same results if you do the same things. We're just going to give you some tips and tricks that we have learned over the years. And, 5 years in business, but, been living life for 40 years, and all of that is influencing the information that we have today. So what is vision? So to be able to cast a vision, we have to define what is a vision. There's the ability to see, which although that's the noun, and that piece, I don't want to lose that, because we have like our eyesight, but even those people who are legally blind and can't actually still see from a visual standpoint still can see and still can be cast vision upon, which really is an incredible. And the ability to think about or plan with their imagination or wisdom the future. So what does that look like? What's the future state of that? And whether you actually can see it from a physical standpoint, like I see some of your faces here, or whether that's a visualization in your mind. When it comes to casting a vision, sometimes there's visuals, and sometimes it's just visualization in their mind, and you're creating a future state that doesn't exist yet. So, keys to a good vision. These are really important to know and to think about. So when we're not only communicating it, but thinking about how robust is this vision? Because if you make it too complicated, this can be very difficult for people to see. Oh, I don't know how to shut off notifications. So again, I'm Drew, for FYI, if you didn't hear that, I'm using Carrie's computer because my Zoom camera wasn't working.
Got it.
Okay, so those to a good vision are clear and concise. They need to be inspiration, action orientated, and a word picture of a future state are the four things to kind of keep in mind. So why I say clear and concise is if we overcomplicate this vision, it's going to be very difficult for people to see. And it's also going to be difficult to manage the expectation of what the vision is. So for those organizations that use EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System Traction Model, they have a 10-year target. That's often your vision. So like consulting, we have a 10-year target to have a certain bottom line. At Dale Carnegie, it is to be to impact 1 in 6 businesses. I think that's the number. In North Dakota, maybe it's 1 in 4. I know they've changed it a little bit, but really that vision casting in at Faith Forward, it's about being in front of professionals in a Jesus-like way, and really needs to be clear and concise, little tidbits, something that's memorable and easy to memorize. The inspirational part is it's got to be juicy, if you will. It can't, so a lot of times in the traction model, the examples they give you for that 10-year target are often financial. Well, we have a financial desire to a certain extent, and at some point our needs are met and we no longer need X number. So I only need to make $1 million a year. Anything above $1 million is just no benefit to me, if you will. Whatever the number is. So I love to think about those vision statements to be impactful, because if you're chasing money, it's not going to last and you're never going to have enough, right? So now I forgot the country song that just came to my mind about, oh, the Bigger Houses country song. So that's just interesting. So the clear and concise piece of it and inspirational, making it not necessarily financially driven. Now, what we know in business, whether you're running a nonprofit or a for-profit, is you need money to be able to execute on your vision. So you do need to have some financial matrix in there, but that shouldn't be the metrics. So example, in BioGirls, when they set out their true north, is what they would call their vision, is 1 in 6 girls in North Dakota are going through the program. So that's a very clear, concise vision. And why that's inspirational is because that impact of 1 in 6 girls is changing lives. It's changing 1 in 6 girls' lives. And from a population thing, it's also calculable. It's action orientated. So go through the program in that example, and it creates a word picture of a future state. So if you're familiar with BioGirls, then you understand what it means for a young girl to start in the program with not much confidence and to leave that program crossing that finish line or doing their yoga or whatever the physical activity is that they pair with their program. That is a word picture of a future state. So really love that. So inspirational, let's dig a little bit deeper in that. So the thing about casting a vision is the vision and the language might need to be tweaked depending on who the audience is. So for example, with Faith Forward, the way I expressed the vision to sponsors was different than the way I expressed the vision to attendees, because the sponsor might not be an attendee, and or I want them to be, but I can't control everybody's calendar, and thinking of that. So I wanted to invoke different emotions in these people, but the vision for it was consistent. But how I paint the picture to a 60-year-old man who can write a check from a sponsorship perspective is different than how I explain the vision to a 35-year-old woman who's going to be an attendee. So just an understanding, what is that emotion that I want them to feel when I'm explaining the vision for this. So really thinking about, as sophisticated as we like to pretend we are as human beings, we really do make decisions out of the emotional part of our brain. It has to pass through logic, either on its way in or on its way out, and depending on your personality style, it will go through that logic either faster or slower, and maybe first or second, or maybe just for a brief moment, if at all. But it is emotional. We are emotional beings and make that. So really hitting home from that inspiration of what is the emotion that I want that target market to feel, and then when that vision's a reality. So for instance, and I'm gonna pick on Faith Forward because it's so fresh coming off of the event, and that was just an incredible experience of going from idea to conception and delivery, and then now idea phase of what's next for that. So again, picking on that sponsor person and how I explain the vision of that is envisioning the people that they lead sitting there being just on fire for the way that they can be now more forward with their faith, the characteristic traits that they're going to learn, the tools that they're going to learn in this time that we have together, this day and a half session, and walking away with confidence in that. That's what I wanted to exhibit. Now, when I talk to somebody as far as attending the event, it's not your team, it's you as a human being. Do you ever feel stuck? Do you ever feel like you can't make the decision? Do you ever feel like you have HR laws over here that tell you you can't do that, but your belief system tells you you want to? And then talking about what that is and talking about what that is, but first I have to hear again, or based on their demographics, make some assumptions on one of the things that they're feeling. I've said this before in another webinar about we as humans like to pretend like we're super unique and we're the only person that's ever experienced this. Guess what? That's not true. You are a unique combination of your experiences, but you are not the first person on Earth, 7 billion people, that has experienced what you're experiencing. So I have a client of mine who is pregnant at 40, so a little bit higher risk pregnancy, and she just lost her niece in a car accident. And that is so heavy and so hard. And she is not the first human being on earth to be in that situation, right? So, and why I say that is because we can empathize, and some people are better at empathizing than others, of what is that feeling that I want them to feel when that vision becomes a reality. And we can speak to it. We can speak to where they are now, and we can speak to where they're going to be. So that's the inspirational. Action orientated. So when we think of like an actual vision statement, if we're going to communicate this in a written word, words like create, build, become, be, those are things that are important in that action orientated piece of the vision and casting the vision. It's not, it has to be new things. And that word picture, and it needs to be far enough in advance of, if when I say future state, word picture or future state, far enough in advance that you have time to get there, and then it's a challenge to get there. It's attainable, but it's a challenge. So when I casted the vision of filling Shields Arena for Faith Forward while we were sitting there, that was a very easy thing for people to visualize, that this is what this could look like and feel like. And granted, we have to think about, okay, so if we want those feelings, how do we actually do that? And logistically, that's for somebody else to figure out. Drew, that's you. But to cast it, it was pretty easy to cast it. Now we got to figure out how to execute, which we'll get to in just a few minutes. So the biggest thing with casting a vision, having a vision, and then casting it to other people, aka communicating it to other people, is that communication process. So I can write the biggest, best, shortest, concise, inspirational vision statement, but if I don't effectively communicate it, it's no good. It's no good. It's not going to get people to move. Again, we have to invoke emotion to get people to move. And some of the things that I want you to think about, if you have not read Stories That Stick and you are a communicator, aka a human being, I would encourage you to read this. How Kindra Hall has put this layout in the book is super helpful, because she does, like, even if you're just a bullet point reader, she has these things in bullet points and summaries and all of those. Of course, in a book, there's the stories that go along with it, stories that stick. So she's going to give you lots of examples in story form as well of how to do these things. And I know Mike popped on here. Mike, if Mark hasn't read this book, he needs to read this book. He is working on building his brand on social media, and he does these things, whether his team, his social media team, is doing it for him or whether that is. But if you think about this, the Stories That Stick, what she explains it, these two different pieces I wanted to talk about here. So now we're thinking about, how do we communicate the vision? So I have a vision. Now I need to communicate it, and I need to figure out how to make it stick. So in the Stories That Stick, there's two main things that we want to get from that book. One is when we're telling a story, and we have to tell stories to make our vision actually stick with someone. And when we're telling stories, we want to explain it in a way of normal, explosion, aka vent, whatever you're going to insert in there, new normal. So it's action orientated. So what I did with the kickoff at Faith Forward was explain the normal. So I explained a couple different stories in there. One was I was the CFO of a construction and real estate organization. That was my normal. And then my daughter and my nieces were hit by a car. So it's the explosion. And in that tough, also identifying what was going on in that tough, when you see those 4 bullet points before, I talked about sitting in the conference room with my team, bawling, which those of you who know me know that I don't cry very easily, bawling and saying, I can't do all this. I can't be in St. Paul with my sister and my niece and be here running the financial component of this organization at the same time. I can't. And new normal was I don't have to. The team stepped up, they stepped in, and they executed everything so magically without me. So my new normal is that I don't do a lot. I teach the team that I don't do anything, and they remind me that I do things that I'm good at, which is not details and all the things. Hence why I had to swap my computer out 5 minutes before because I haven't fixed Zoom yet. But my normal was Sarah, who does everything and has the authorization to do all these things. That so I become the bottleneck. That was my normal explosion, tragic situation that forced me to do something different. And my new normal is so freeing and so nice to be able to depend on that team to support me and surround me. But I had to go through that process. So, in casting the vision of what does it mean to be a faith forward leader, that's a story that helps cast that vision. And in that, there's identifiable characters. There's me, there's my niece. For those of you who know familiar with the situation, you can just literally see these pictures. There's that significant moment of sitting in the conference room, bawling and asking for help. And those are the specific details that make it stick. So when we're talking about casting a vision, we not only have to have that vision, but then we have to effectively communicate it via story. Describe it so they literally are having a word picture in their brain. One little tidbit from Kendra, if you watch her on social media, is she talks about when you're doing presentations, we often put up, and I just did it, I literally just did it, a picture of our people. Like whether it's like, here's my family and here's why I do what I do, or in this case, here's my team and here's what I do, what I do. And that's not necessarily bad. But what we want to invoke is them picturing their self in that future state when we're casting a vision. I don't want you to think about Sarah running around like a crazy person, not actually accomplishing any tactical things. I want to think about you in your freedom and your ability to move about wherever is needed without the daily work of spreadsheets or whatever it is in your business. So that's when I say that little tidbit of putting myself as a picture in that future state or putting my beautiful family up there or whatever that is. I want you to imagine you and your family in this future state when it comes to casting a vision. Now, that's the kind of the how of the effective communication in thinking about the stories and what am I going to say? The word. Not only 7% of communication is actually the words that you say, the other 93% is your tone and your body language. It's why communicating something via written language is so difficult and so not effective communication. The only things that you should be communicating via written communication are like tasks, like little non-emotional anything. You should not cast a vision via written communication. So just know that. Yes, I understand that if I need to email, if I need to project a message out to 10 or more people, emails might be the most efficient way, but it's not the most effective. So what I tell my clients is, can that be a video? That like you can screen record all sorts of things for free right now, right? So can that be a video? Because then I can see you, I can hear your emotion, I can do that. Can it be a Teams meeting? Can it be interactive in some way versus written communication? When we have a client that is rolling out a leadership program and they totally chat GPT'd how to write that email. It was way too long. It was written versus like, oh my gosh, we are investing a significant amount of time and money into your leadership growth, and we cannot wait to see the person you become in the future after going through this program. Like, that's all they needed to say, but they said it in a really long email that was in written form that guaranteed that 90% of the people who opened that email did not read it all because it's just not an effective way to communicate. So when you're thinking about casting a vision, that is not an email. You do not cast vision via email or text message or anything like that. You can follow up after the communication with bullet points and the information that they need to know about how great this is going to be, but do not do it via email. So no casting vision via email. Needs to be where I can see your excitement and I can hear it and then you can feel it, right? So written communication. I love rereading emails or text messages, and I do this with my husband every once in a while. Like if he gets a little snarky with something I say, or I'm getting snarky with something he says and he gets mad about it, I'm like, well, what if you read it in a really positive voice? Like, what are you making for dinner? Or what are you making for dinner? Or whatever it is. Like, you can just think about how you just create emphasis on different words that then change the way that it's perceived. And it's an exercise we go through in Dale Carnegie, and it's so fun to be like, okay, that was 7-word sentence that had 7 different interpretations depending on how I said it. So cool. So when I think about that, the keys here, and if you've taken high impact presentations, you've gotten these. That's actually exactly where I stole them from. I have them over here. So communication guidelines for non-written communication. Deliver with ownership and feeling. Like you can even feel me trying to jump through the screen right now and hug you and talk to you as if you're sitting across from the table from me right now. You can feel that. Maintain eye contact. So although like I can't see all your eyes, Jen and Amy happen to be on my screen. I am looking at you and looking whether you're looking at me, taking notes, or looking at your other screen. Like it's a real thing. And it gauges energy. Like that's a positive energy that I want to keep going. So if I'm having that conversation, whether it's one-on-one or being in a screen recording situation, or I'm standing on a stage casting a vision for a bunch of people, making eye contact with people is important. So like at Faith Forward, if I would have just been reading off the teleprompter, that connection wouldn't be there. So don't do that. Try to avoid the script or the lecture, be authentic in those things. Expressions and gestures, no problem with me with the gestures. I like to talk with my hands. I also tease a friend of mine who owns an esthetician clinic that I can't have Botox because then you won't see all of the expressions that I have. Maybe I'll just get a little bit now that I'm 40. So we'll figure that out. So the other things with communicating with greater impact that I want you to keep in mind, there's 6 of them. Word emphasis. You can hear it a little bit in what the things that I am louder about or speaking more clearly about. So word emphasis is important in your speaking. Pauses. So what if there's a gentleman that is in my Instagram reels right now that is specifically talking about speaking, and he talks about the pause gives the audience the opportunity to think. Now, I talk pretty fast, especially when I'm presenting. So as I'm rambling on here, going on and going through some of these examples and stuff, you're processing it, but you're not probably getting all of it because I'm speaking pretty quickly. But to just talk slow the entire time doesn't work either. So it's really changing that pacing and having some variation. So that's the next one is pacing. So talking fast when I need it to be and talking slow when I need it to be, and that powerful pause. A pause is much more powerful than an or a like or a just, which we do often in the Midwest. Voice modulation, again, the different volumes that we've been using, or I've been using phrasing. So connection of words to express a thought. The one thing that I learned from Andy Stanley, who is probably in the top 10, probably 20, top 25 for sure, national speakers. He's a pastor of a church out of Atlanta. Is he says the same thing 3 times almost every time you hear him speak. So if you ever want to hear somebody who does something, he does a very good job of being clear and concise in his 3 takeaways. And then he says it 3 different times. First time at a fast pace, second time at a little bit slower, and then the third one, he always pauses after. So whether he says it at the same pace or he maybe just says it a little bit slower and then pauses for you to absorb what he just said 3 times. So like this would be cast a vision, cast a vision, cast a vision. I didn't even do that right because I didn't go fast enough. But then pausing at the end. It's really incredible to watch him as an orator. And then movement, the gestures, no problem here again with Sarah West. So that's really good. So when I'm thinking about effective communication, casting a vision, this is how you create buy-in, is by doing those things. And if you don't have buy-in, then I mean, you can communicate a vision, you can do it ineffectively, and it really just doesn't go anywhere. And then you have to do, the first one. If you want to go fast, you go alone. If you want to go far, you have to go together. And this has to be a part of your skill set, is being able to cast a vision and to be able to communicate that. When I think of those people who, there's lots of people who aren't great at that, and that's okay as long as someone in your toolbox is good at it, because not everybody is really good at standing in front of or sitting in front of a screen and being able to communicate effectively, but somebody in your toolbox should be good at it. So in the Faith Forward example, I'm able to do that in a smaller room. Now, am I able to do it as good as Steve Shield did, or as good as, well, Ted Cunningham got the best results out of all the people? And that's just because he made you laugh, right? Laughter is an emotion, joy is an emotion. He made you feel all the feels, right? So he's very effective at that. And even Paul did a really great job of communicating those things that are that. So they're better at it than even I am. So really casting that vision and knowing and being okay with, we'll talk about that in just a minute, that it might not be you that's the most appropriate person to cast the vision when it comes to effectiveness. You might have it, but it might not be you that actually needs to communicate it. So that's the actual vision statement. So it needs to be clear, concise, effectively communicated. Now, how do you actually make that come to life? And it really comes down to that last one of being able to cast the vision, effectively communicate it so that you created buy-in so that you're not going alone. And what does that high performing team look like? So say that I have a vision, and when I get to the case studies, I'm going to be so excited to share that. So say that we have a vision, we need to identify the needs to make that vision come to life, and then identify who has those skill sets. And the biggest key, the biggest thing that we screw up on is we are either lying to ourselves or lying to others. For me, the reason that I may not follow that commandment and may lie a little bit is because I like to be liked. And that's an issue when somebody says, I want to do that, and you're really actually not good at it. But I don't want to tell you that, because then you might not going to like me. But I'm not going to also be able to execute on this vision at the level that I want it to be executed on if I'm lying to myself or lying to you and saying, yes, you have that skill set. Now, we lead people and we want them to grow and to develop into skill sets. So there's a little bit of understanding of, could they have that skill set? Do they need to be in the passenger seat while somebody with that skill set is driving for this year, or this event, or this situation, so that next year they maybe can drive, right? We have to be willing to suck at first go round. So, hey, I want to help with that. Okay. So, yes, you want to help with that. I'm not going to not include you. But if I need to do X and you're able to give me Y at this point in your current capacity, whether that's knowledge, skill set, whatever, or emotional skill set, then I'm going to give you the stuff you need to be able to get to X. And just thinking about it in that way versus saying, like, no, you don't have the skill set, too bad. It's more, you don't have the skill set yet to perform at this level based on the vision, and we're going to give you the tools necessary, and it's your choice whether you put in the work and the effort to get there. So I just wanted to put that caveat on there, because by all means, there's people who want to do things that they may not qualified to do, aka me. I am them. I am that person. Okay, tools to help you identify those high potential people. Again, we've identified the needs. So in the various businesses that we have needs in them. And then we have people who are incredibly talented. And just like Jenna's on here, she's incredibly talented at managing her social media. If we asked her to do accounting, which is a need in our organization, she'd be like, no. I could cast the most magical vision about it, and she would just be excited that Light Consulting is doing accounting, but not excited that she gets to be the new normal that would be in it, right? So not putting people into situations where they're gonna fail. Cecile said that, and that was one of the things that resonated with one of the people that came, is I'm not going to put you in a position to fail. That's our job as leaders. That's our job as visionaries, is not to put people in a position where they actually can't do it. So how do we actually put some parameters around this, so it's not like they don't feel like, oh, I just don't, Sarah doesn't like me, so she's gonna not let me do this, right? That's not the case at all. I actually love you, and that's why I'm not gonna let Jenna do accounting. So when it comes to the tools, one that we use is the Traction, the EOS Mental, the People Analyzer. So there's really just 3 questions, and that's why we love it, is because it's simple. Do they get it? Do they want it? And do they have capacity for it? And Drew, is when we send up the follow-up, let's just attach that 1-page PDF that explains these 3 things. So get it. Do they understand what the role or that situation needs? So when we were looking for faith forward speakers, do they get it? Do they get the vision and mission for faith forward? Do they want it? That's a desire thing, right? Hungry for it. And then capacity. And capacity is a bigger one, because it's time capacity. Do they have the ability to be able to do that? Do they have the emotional capacity to handle this situation? Do they have the skill set or the intellectual capacity to deliver, again, at this level that we want? And this is where we don't need to lie to ourselves. We don't need to lie to ourselves, and we don't need to lie to others. So depending on what season you're in life, we're all in different seasons at different times. A few of the people that are on the call have young children. And so when your capacity and able to give and to play a role in executing this vision might depend on your skill set in the organization during the 8 to 5 hours, but it also depends on what are your priorities in life. And for people who like, oh, I like to keep work and life separate, that's actually not the case. Like, you don't get to shut off what goes on at home when you show up at the office. It just is not true. So great in La La Land. We don't live there. We live here on Earth. So we do need to think about what is that capacity, not only in the moment, but into execution of this vision. So for example, capacity for us with Faith Forward is, What needs to come off of Drew's plate for her to be the executor on this event? And does she have capacity for that? Dr. Henry Clown talks about this too from a high performer standpoint is, do they understand? And these are somewhat similar to get it, want it capacity, but I just wanted to share another tool in case that didn't resonate with you. Do they understand the situation? Again, do they understand the vision that we cast? Do they have the motivation? Like, are they self-motivated? It's really exhausting and difficult as a leader that has a vision to have to constantly motivate people to just do the things that they said they're going to do. And that's where it comes to ability. Sometimes when people don't actually do the things they say they're going to do, they might not even have the skill set to do it. Again, capacity. We're trying to put somebody into a role that they can't handle. Character, can we depend on them in those situations? And then have they done these things before? Again, I love this student driver analogy. So for 15 or 14 years, a kid's in a car experiencing driving that way. And then for a period of time, they're in the front seat experiencing it that way. Then eventually they go into the driver's seat and we have an adult, hopefully experienced driver, in the passenger seat walking them through that before they ever drive alone. Like that's all the track record and the skill set that leads up to being a driver in that. So don't in your organization, don't in casting a vision and trying to make it a reality, put somebody in a role that they have no business being in. Don't set them up for failure. That's not kind to you. It's not kind to your vision, and it's not kind to them. So just keeping that in mind. Chief Reminding Officer is something that Lencioni talks about, that CEOs are not CEOs, they are CROs, meaning Chief Reminding Officers. So once we've cast the vision and we are in the process of executing that vision, we have our high performing team. One thing that is super key in an organization to get to the finish line is that motivation. So reminding people why we are here. Why do we show up to Light every day? We show up to Light Consulting, which is a glorified accounting firm, to make business light. We're not showing up to do bank reconciliations, although we do bank reconciliations. We are showing up because Mike and other clients on this call that's heavy for them. They don't want to do that, right? So we're going to do that. We're making business light. That is the reminding officer. So then when we have a situation where we need to make a decision or have a conversation, a tough conversation, we need to remind ourselves, why do we exist? We exist to make business and life light. So if this is heavy for them or heavy for us, what is it that we can do to make it lighter? And it's really kind of a cool thing to remind people of that when you're like super frustrated that some other user came into your bank reconciliation and unchecked everything. Okay, so how do I make this lighter for them and me? Maybe they don't have access to that anymore because they messed it up. I don't know, but you can do it. But reminding officer is really cool. So I'm kind of summarize these points here. So to cast the vision and bring it to life, really, we have to have that vision that exists. It needs to be clear and concise. It needs to be inspirational, action oriented, and in the future. And it needs to be communicated frequently and in various formats. And consistency, I have clear and concise in there, but one thing that is can be really messy is if we're inconsistent in what we're trying to cast. Because okay, I am thinking of a unicorn in a tropical environment, and the unicorn is a pink one with a purple horn, and it's on the beach. So, and then next time I just talk about, well, I'm on the beach, there's a horse there, and the water's purple. Now I just changed the vision, right? So we can't like literally we can't talk without you guys picturing those things that I just described. But because I was inconsistent, now you have a new picture in your house, like or in your mind. And I could have taken that many different ways. That was just the example that came to mind. So really making sure that you're doing it in various formats, but you're consistent in what you're saying. Not necessarily the exact same words, but when it comes to word picture, those are the same words. Pink unicorn, purple horn, tropical beach, you got it. And then delivered by a highly effective team, which means if you are the visionary, if you have the vision and you want to not do all the work, that you have to let people do the work. So when it came to Faith Forward, for example, I did very little actual work. My job was to think big thoughts and ask for big money and encourage people to come. So my job was twofold. Drew's job, and Drew also has never done an event like this. So her job was to coordinate everybody. So she found somebody who's really skilled in audio visual. She found somebody who's really skilled at marketing and like the visualization of those things and putting together a website and all the brand piece of it. And she found somebody that's really skilled at transforming a space. Drew doesn't have those skills. And she was humble enough to say, I don't have those skills, but these people do. Let's get them on the team. So making sure that you're humble enough to do those. So I talked a lot about Faith Forward. I talked a little bit about Light Consulting and how our mission, our vision is to make business and life light. And when we're describing that, you can feel that as an employee, you can feel that as a client. We can describe it in stories like the other day, a client called me and he was just up in arms about what was going on in his organization. And I was able to talk him down. We talked through some solutions, and he, at the end of the phone call, said, I am so glad that we partnered with Light Consulting. That's a little bit of a quick story that could be what does it mean to cast a vision of making business light? And then I can share those types of stories and even more intentional. Like actually, the picture in the background here Lori gave to me, it's God's fingerprint. And Lori and her team, we've been working together for like 3.5 years, and they just feel better after our hour session once a month, and it's quite a gift. Now let's go ahead and talk about in the last few minutes here before I take questions, some of the things that didn't necessarily go so well. And I'm not really great at talking about them because positivity is in my top 5 strengths. So I don't love talking about negative things. But let's talk about, and there's negative things in Faith Forward or not negative things, learning opportunities, again, positivity, learning opportunities both in Faith Forward and in Light Consulting that maybe didn't quite go or hit like they're supposed to. So Core Counts, if you haven't heard of it, it's an entity that existed and still kind of exists in some form that had a great vision. So we created a technology that would help identify your culture in your organization. We did it through pulse surveying and how aligned are you with your core values. First, you had to identify your core values. And if you didn't have them, if you do have them, let's just pulse and see how you are doing on your mission and core values. And the vision is great. The execution is where we didn't work. A couple things with that. So the vision with it was, again, really good. The problem with it was timing. So the timing that Core Counts went to market was right after COVID, which means, and our point of entry with a culture survey, what culture is everybody's responsibility, but it often gets delegated to HR. So our into the market was via HR, who right after COVID was also dealing with a workforce shortage and a very new environment. They were in the explosion new normal, but not accepting that it's new normal yet. And we're like, oh, wouldn't you love a tool that can identify where you lack consistency in your core values and your mission? And they're like, no. I would not like that. I am working 80 hours a week. I can barely keep my head on. I can't even hire enough people. I don't need anybody telling me where my problems are. So when it comes to the vision itself was fine, just the timing was wrong. And then the also thing with that is we did not put the right people in place to be able to, one, say that out loud, to say, I get your vision, I understand it, and the timing is not right in the market right now because of what our target market is going through. So that might be something that comes up in the future. For Light Workforce Solutions, this is a very compartmentalized organization. So we bring people up from South Texas, we house them and put them in construction and manufacturing plants. The vision here is really easy to understand is you need general labor, we have general laborers, here's what you're going to pay per hour for that. And that's really what it was. So somehow I convinced a couple clients to buy a hotel so that we could do this. I don't know. Again, apparently I'm good at casting vision. And then we executed on that. And the market has shifted now. So we have to reimagine our vision on that because although at one point we had 100 employees through this organization and making good money, that's not the case anymore. The general labor market has calmed down so that it's easier to find people. So this isn't as profitable as it used to be. So we need to recast vision. And that's what we're in the state that we're in right now is okay. So that worked. It worked exceptionally well for a 2-year period. So what does this look like going forward? Does it look like nothing? And that's okay. If it just was a 2-year period where we got to make money and change lives and send people back to Texas with more money than they've ever had. That's amazing because we had workforce needs here that were solved. And if that's the end of it, that's okay. We just need to figure out what that next step is on the vision. And some examples of what's coming up is the Eagle's Nest. It's a project in Mapleton. It's mixed use. Somebody brought it to me and said, hey, you are good at arranging all the people that it takes to execute on something like that. So excited about that. Again, I am not executing on everything. I am not skilled in that nature. I am skilled at bringing the right people to the table so that they can execute and live in their gifts. And then Jenna hasn't even heard about this one. She might recognize this building. There is a building in Ulen that I have on my heart to transform into coffee shop, community, gym, a few different things that I think can really do it. So I am just in the baby stages of, okay, what does that look like? How do I create buy-in in the community? Because this is going to be a financial endeavor. It's going to be how do I get people to show up here on a regular basis so that it doesn't fail? Like there's so much buy-in in both of these projects from not only the tenants or the people that are going to be in it, but also the community as a whole and really understanding how to cast a vision. So in Ulen, so those of you who have no idea what Ulen is a town that's less than 500 people. Jenna and I graduated from Ulen Hit It All, 20 some years ago. And there's this building, and in the second floor of this building is like an old dance hall with theater space. It's so beautiful. And I want to transform this building. I want to give my children a reason to come back to Ulen. So what that means is creating a space where they are just, "Oh, how cool is this? Just saying those things and being those things. So making sure we do that. For the Eagle's Nest, we want to bring luxury to a small town of Mapleton to create a main street. They don't have a main street where people are walking down and being a little bit more vibrant versus just a bedroom community that they have now. So, and why it's called the Eagle's Nest is because from the fourth floor, golf simulator balcony view, you can see the Mapleton Golf Course, which is a really important part of the economy in Mapleton and the feel that Mapleton has. So those are a couple projects that we have going on where we're in the casting vision state right now. This picture looks way prettier than this picture, but you just wait and see what we got up our sleeve. Oh, Kilaury, I love you. Okay, I am going to stop presenting and ask any questions for the group or for me? Or as learned in high impact presentations, who has the first question?
I'll ask you a question, Sarah.
Yay!
Okay, for like Faith Forward or any of these other big dreams, how long are you kind of marinating on the ideas before you decide that you're actually going to put it into motion?
Yeah. So I think the one thing that I would say would be something that I chose to do a couple years ago is because I like to extrovert my thoughts. So, and Drew gets to know this because she gets to hear most of my thoughts. But I try not to, I shouldn't say I don't, but I don't often make decisions without bringing it to the leadership team to vet. And what that looks like is, hey, I have this idea. Please beat it up. Tell me I'm crazy. What am I doing wrong here? And then I also like 2 weeks ago, or last week, I had my review. Like I own the company, but they review me, and I have to ask the question because I have lots of ideas, and ask the question, does that bother you? Because we only have so much time in our day. So now I'm working on this Yulin project, which nobody at Light Consulting will probably enjoy. Just kidding. Everybody will come and enjoy it at some point. We'll do an offsite there when it's all done. But you know what I mean? Like it's taking time away from the things that they benefit from in Light Consulting. And no, I mean, I think it gives them energy, it gives them exposure to different things. So there's a piece of that. But that marinating process, I run through, if you will, a little bit of a board of directors. And the other thing from my skill set and a financial acumen that I have is I also figure out, okay, what is this really going to cost? And does it make sense? The Yulin Project will either likely be formed as a nonprofit or it'll be fully understood by anybody who puts money into it that you will not be getting money out of it. The likelihood that it is a financial gain project is zero. Like it's probably the opposite. We got to figure out how to hedge our downside and create a funding source that isn't there. So going into it eyes wide open of here's the best case, here's a average scenario, and then here's the worst case and the plan and strategy to that. So because my brain works the way that it does, I typically have most of those figured out logistically in my brain. Now, communicating them is a different thing. One more question.
I think Lori dropped one in the chat, Sarah.
Oh, perfect. Um, how do you know you have the right people in the right seats? How do you know when to call it quits with the team member? Okay. How do you know when you have the people in the right seats? How do you know when to call it quits with the team members to move forward with your vision and purpose? So just you asking that question means you already know, Lori, you're just not admitting to yourself that you know. And it is, I'm not saying that that means it's easy. Like life is simple, not easy. So there's plenty of times where I've kept people in roles because I love them so much. I don't want them to not like me, or not even they don't want them to like me. I just love them so much. I want to be around them. And because I'm a weirdo, I just basically my friends are the people that I work with. And so Chad teases, my husband teases me that I just pay my friends, and that's fine. But sometimes it doesn't make sense, and that's just something that we need to. That's where that piece of identifying the needs to get you. So let's just say if you're using the traction model, there's this 3-year picture component. So what does this organization or what does this thing look like in 3 years? And identifying what are the roles that need to exist in the organization in that 3-year picture to be able to execute on the 3-year picture, for example. And then we say, okay, then we do an inventory. Who would fit in those seats? We actually are doing this right now. So being that we're a 5-year-old business and we have everybody wants to stay and grow, and I got to create paths that don't exist because we're a 14-person organization that's 5 years old. So, and how do we, without like saying, okay, you guys can buy the business from me next year, how do we create opportunities for people? And what we've done is in identifying, okay, what does it mean to be a director at Light Consulting? And this is what kind of is fun and funny about running your own business is what it means to be a director at Light Consulting is that you're a full asser. And what the hell does that mean? Actually, you probably have to be a full asser just to be on the team. Full asser, and then these other competencies or skill sets that exist as well. But when you think about a full asser versus a half asser or no asser, like that's a really a visual that we all know people who are half assers. And we all know people who give their all, and most of the people in this organization give their all. So that's a little bit of how did we put parameters around these different levels, and then just admitting to ourselves. And then we also have admitted to ourselves that we're keeping this person around fully knowing that they are not the right person in the right seat. And whether it's whatever it is, we can acknowledge what it is, whether it's my heart that won't let me make that transition or their situation that is influencing our decision. We do that and we get to make those choices, and just owning that it's a choice is probably more relieving than saying that they're the wrong, well, you can even say they're the wrong person in the wrong seat, or they're the right person in the wrong seat, and we just don't happen to have a seat for that person. Because you might have really great culture fits that there's no need for that in their skill set in the organization. We're an accounting firm. So if you don't have accounting skills and we don't have a full-time thing for you, that's okay. We just need to have that conversation and have it. Because if we don't have it, we just ignore it and we don't acknowledge that to the team and the organization that I'm choosing this, even though it's not necessarily in alignment with our vision. If we don't acknowledge that, then they start to lose trust in you. So that's just, it's the not fun part of leadership. Lori expanded on a personality misfit. So you just get to choose what you tolerate in your organization. And if you have the conversations, you're doing what you need to be able to get there. And if they want to change, they can change. Everybody can change. Everybody's capable of changing. And if they don't, that's okay too. So what do they say something about you are shoot, I'll have to email it out because I don't remember, but it's something about you are the worst person that you tolerate in your organization, your culture is. So just thinking about what does that look like, and it's shoot sometimes, and that's okay. But we just have to acknowledge that as choice, as the leader, as the owner of the business, or whatever your role is. If you're tolerating it, it's a choice. Okay, thank you for spending the lunch hour with me. It zipped by, hopefully for you as much as it did for me. I appreciate each and every one of you taking the time today to talk about what does it mean to have a vision? What does it mean to communicate that vision? And then how do you execute on it? It's really about coming together and utilizing the skill sets that exist in your network. And always ask. I asked somebody to potentially be our executive director for Faith Forward that I thought for sure would say no when they're applying. So always ask if the prompting's on your heart, go ahead and do it. So I hope you have the great Tuesday, and we'll see y'all soon.
Thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah.